Hello, bonsoir, and welcome to the Get French Football News Show. I'm Nathan Staples, and joining me this evening are Rich Allen and Pierre-Paul Bermingham. The final international break of the season has breezed by, but before we talk Les Bleus and a look ahead to the first silverware of the season on offer on Saturday, here are the latest headlines. Les Bleus began their European qualification adventure on Friday night with a 4-1 win over Moldova. Antoine Griezmann, Raphael Varane, Olivier Giroud and Kylian Mbappe all got on the score sheet in a comfortable win that saw Vladimir Ambrose score what would be much more famous goal for the home side. The second match this evening against Iceland was a almost similar result as they ended up 4-0 winners. Samuel and Titi got the hosts ahead, and in the second half, goals from Olivier Giroud, Kylian Mbappe and Antoine Griezmann sealed the victory. That means they have 6 points from a possible 6 and sit atop of their qualifying group. And that's all for now, but to keep up to date with all the news in the world of French football, head on over to our website at www.getfootballnewsfrance.com and follow us on Twitter at GFFN. We start this week, where else but Les Bleus International Weekend, and it's two very strong results, albeit not necessarily surprising, Rich. And we'll start with the game tonight since it's the most fresh in our memories and probably the more impressive performance with that 4-0 victory over Iceland. It wasn't quite as dramatically one-sided. It was very one-sided, but I suppose that it did take a while for them to bash down the Iceland doors to such a degree of 4-0, but especially in the second half, they were a little bit irresistible, weren't they?
They did, yeah. It felt as though it was sort of second gear, I think, in the first half. They got an early-ish goal with Titi's header. First of all, I think it looked like they were really enjoying themselves. I think that was fairly evident with some of the flicks and tricks that we saw, but it felt very much second gear. I think at half-time, I think Deschamps probably just reminded them that it was only 1-0 and that, it wasn't anything definitive at that point. Second half, I think we really, really saw them move up the gears. Some of the stuff they were playing was absolutely fantastic. I'm of the belief these kind of performances and the style that they're playing really should put to bed any of those concerns and sort of naysayers on the style that France were playing. Certainly during their World Cup success. This is a team now that's very good and for my money anyway, it's only getting better. It was just a very, very accomplished performance. I think every single player on the pitch can come away feeling that they contributed to some degree in a positive manner. There were those that stood out exceptionally, yet again, Griezmann is one of them. Really proving to be the integral player in that French team. I thought Pogba looked very composed. He looked mature. Yes, he's trying some audacious stuff, but it's at the point in the game when he can. And more often than not, he's actually pulling it off. We saw in the first game against Moldova a fantastic flick over the top. He tried something similar a couple of times tonight. Almost came off for Giroud. Mbappe is just looking more and more confident, if indeed he can look any more confident on the international scene. That back heel setup for Griezmann's goal was Mbappe through and through, I thought. Took his goal really, really well. For all the tricks and skills that he's got, that was just natural finishing ability. Being able to control the ball, burst into the box, and under a great deal of pressure from defender and goalkeeper, managed to get his shot away as he was losing his balance. They're looking dangerous from set pieces. It was the second goal tonight that one of the French centre-backs got on the score sheet with. So all in all, it's looking like a really, really well-rounded team now. You look at the players that were brought into the team that have come from, I look at Kurzawa as probably the main example of this. I was not particularly in agreement he should have been in the squad, but here we are 2 games later, and you know what? He's done really, really well. He looked, tonight was certainly a better game than the first game, but you know what? He didn't look particularly rusty. He was good getting forward. He wasn't too adventurous. Some of the crosses I thought were fairly unlucky on his part. There's one certainly in the first half that was a brilliant cross across the face of goal. Just sadly no French attackers there to tuck it away. But yeah, I struggle to find fault with any of the players really tonight. I think a really, really good team performance with the big name players once again really stepping up.
And I think to add to that, Pierre, the man that I thought was the standout performer, at least not playing in second gear for the first half as many others may be accused of, was Benjamin Pavard, who's still sort of playing in not necessarily his more natural position. He does play centre back for Stuttgart and will be playing there for Bayern Munich in the next season coming as well. He really impressed again, delivered the cross for Giroud's goal, but overall was trying on multiple occasions to try and hit that outside volley again. But he really was the driving force in this one.
Absolutely, and I think that was the only thing that would have made this evening even more perfect for France, was that if Pavard had scored one of those two volleys, which we saw one of them from the camera was at the same angle as the one against Argentina, and it looked so similar, just a little bit over. But he was really outstanding. He was involved in a lot of the attacking play, the assist for Giroud's goal, as you mentioned. There were some interesting stats actually in L'Equipe today about Pavard, and they showed how since the start of the World Cup, he is the player to which Pogba has passed the most, and the player to which Griezmann has passed the second most in all the French matches since then, which shows that he's, I think, got a very important offensive contribution, and he's very often kind of open out there on the right, unmarked, because he doesn't run forward as much as, say, Kurzawa did tonight. I agree about the point you made, Rich, on Kurzawa's crosses, and I think there was good improvement there with regards, in comparison to the match against Moldova and in comparison to his previous performances in a French kit, where his crossing was not always that great, but today was improved. I thought overall tonight it was just a great atmosphere once again at the Stade de France, knowing that this is the last match at the Stade de France this season. It was good to be back in the party atmosphere, and I'd say overall France have really started the qualifications, probably better than ever with 2 4-goal wins. There was a little bit of worry about complacency and style, as you mentioned, Rich, and I'm sure we'll maybe develop on those. But clearly those concerns have gone away for now, and there's a big improvement with regards to the start for the World Cup qualifying campaign last time around, which started, I believe, with a 0-0 in Bulgaria. Right now we're right on track.
Absolutely, I think there's no degree of disagreement with that. But the game on Friday was, strangely enough, a slightly tougher test, Rich, than many expected. Moldova aren't really particularly well known for their great sides or particularly great players, and that's no offense to them. They do have someone playing in Italian football at the moment, which is a good result for them. But at the same time, it was a bit of a war of attrition at times. There was a terrific goal for the opener, but they sort of laboured to a four goals, and then allowed one sort of sloppy one at the end, which was a little bit of a smear on that performance, really, where they again. Was that a test that at least it wasn't much like the Liechtenstein result where they did end up drawing 1-1? There's an improvement there, but at the same time, while they were creative getting through defences, are we disappointed by the fact that there was that slip of concentration at the end, given the opponent involved, and it was pretty much their only attack of the game?
Disappointed to a degree. I think it was Hugo Lloris, that came out after the game and said, "Look, this needs to serve as a warning." And he's right. France were in control of that game. They were never, they never were in any threat of not securing the 3 points. But we want to see concentration from 0 to 90 minutes. It's cliched, I know, but against the bigger teams, against the stronger teams, one lapse in concentration could be the difference between winning and losing. Again, we saw it was, I suppose it was a little bit like first half anyway, it was a little bit like tonight's performance, where it felt sort of second gear. Whereas tonight we obviously saw them pull away and accelerate in that second half. Wasn't quite the same against Moldova, and they sort of cruised, I suppose, to the finish line. I'll carry on this tenuous car link if you want, but like they were sort of freewheeling it, I suppose, and that's where then the lapse in concentration came. One thing I fully suspect Deschamps will look to pick up on it are the sort of silly yellow cards as well. Mbappe got one in against Moldova for a dive. Griezmann got one tonight for, can't quite work out if it was for the foul or for the dissent afterwards. But again, France were 4-0 up at that point. Things like that, knowing Deschamps as the perfectionist that he is, and not one to just sit there, lauding on a comprehensive victory, he will look at that. And he will bring that up with those players. He will bring that up with his squad. Those kind of things, you don't want to see. There was no need for those yellow cards, no need for the dive, no need for the dissent. France were in a comfortable position. The win was secure. Why? There's no need to do that. And that will be the one thing I think that Deschamps will take from this game, that if anything would take a slight sort of chink of gloss off the two performances, are those sort of needless yellow cards that really were just very, very silly, I think, from both players' part, considering at what point the game was at. So I think that's the sort of concentration level and maintaining that to the very end of the game that Deschamps will take from this.
Yeah, and
go ahead,
Varane, sorry, yeah. Varane also had a yellow card against Moldova for kicking the ball away after a foul, I think it was, which was also pretty silly of his behalf. I think the big difference between the two matches was that against Moldova, after the first goal, the few goals kind of followed in. They were much easier to score, which is generally what you expect when you play against these smaller nations. The hardest goal is always the first goal to score. Tonight, that felt a little bit different against Iceland because France actually scored fairly early on, and then, as we mentioned, we had to wait until the second half to add onto those. And I think the Moldovans, I do think Deschamps was probably more annoyed by the yellow cards, as you said, than by the little lapse of concentration at the end of the match, because that was actually quite a happy moment to see the Moldovans celebrate that goal in front of their home crowd, going wild against the world champions in a tiny stadium under a big kind of Soviet building overshadowing it. So yeah.
Yeah, don't let me take that away from them, at least anyway. From our criticism, yeah, it was great to see the scenes of a goal that'll be, I think they mentioned on the British commentary here that that goal will get further and further out as he grows in age, really. And when he tells his grandkids that'll be a 40-yard screamer, don't you worry about that against the world champions. But Pierre, I want to sort of mention that we have talked about sort of the successes and failures of this, that it's been an almost peerless result for them, but as you mentioned, with those yellow cards and a little bit of disappointment and the lack of concentration at the very end of that game against Moldova, at least, is there a worry that the challenge really for Deschamps at this moment in time with the world champions, with the egos he's got in that squad, is keeping them drenched within reality and not let their heads go in these kind of games where they will get tougher against stronger sides, and those silly little mistakes may become big ones?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the point that he's trying to make about the yellow cards is more about keeping the players concentrated and competitive in these matches, because in reality, if any one of them gets suspended for one of the matches in the qualifying stage, it won't be a dramatic loss, because one of the strengths of this team is that despite having having extraordinary world-class players, there's no dependency on any one of them, which we saw by having different goal scorers. No player scored 2 goals in the same match over this weekend, just like that was the case in the World Cup final, by the way. So I think he's concerned more about exactly keeping them concentrating and having high levels of expectations from them, and so far that's working out perfectly.
Yeah, and it's just maintaining that might be the difficult thing as time goes by. But we wait and see really on that one more. But looking ahead, really, in terms of a France point of view, Rich, and there is going to be some games for them come June time. That's the next time they'll meet up, similar time to when the other four nations, at least anyway, involved in the Nations League, still will be challenging as well. So they won't be in competition, which where France would have liked to have been, but it unfortunately is stuck with the European qualifiers. But how do we expect this? Any sort of changes over the end of the season, sort of heading into possibly next season, because obviously this is always it's a cycle thing, isn't it, with these international tournaments? But what do you see possibly different come the summertime? Do you think that Deschamps may see this as time to maybe experiment, because the difficulty with these sort of more qualifiers and in a more dense environment, much as we mentioned about the Nations League, is there is going to be fewer friendlies for them to really test themselves against bigger teams or to try a couple of different things out. So what might we see in the summertime with not just with the squad but how they play?
Well, Deschamps alluded to something along those lines when the squad was announced last week, saying that the squad this time may not be the same as come June, which is the next international break. To be perfectly honest, I don't expect there to be too many changes. I think some of the injured players that missed out, I think of the likes of Ousmane Dembele. I look at the likes of Lucas Hernandez, maybe Benjamin Mendy, maybe Ferland Mendy. I think you may be looking at those coming back in. Certainly Kurzawa did everything that could have been asked for him in terms of taking the opportunity that was presented to him. But, you would imagine if everybody is fit, that it's going to be probably two from the two Mendy's and Hernandez. Maybe if Kenny Lala can finish the season strongly, he's in with a shout of maybe seeing the squad. It certainly would be deserved if we go by his season so far. I don't expect there to be massive changes. I really don't. It would seem to indicate, and I think Deschamps' answer around the squad may be slightly different come June was centered, I think, around a question posed to him about, I think it was Lacazette. So whether there's an opportunity there for Lacazette to come in, all he can do is continue to play well and score goals for Arsenal. But it's a tough ask. Who from a central striking role for France, who do you drop? They're not going to drop Giroud. They're not going to drop Mbappe. Griezmann, although he plays perhaps a little bit deeper, they're not going to drop him. So it's really difficult to see how Lacazette gets into this squad, and it's through no fault of his own and no fault for Trent. It's just unfortunate circumstance for him. One player that probably won't help the situation for Lacazette, I think, has been the recent form of Moussa Dembele at Lyon. He's obviously scoring goals for the under-21s. He's really finding his feet now at Lyon. There's players all around that could come in, but we know Deschamps likes his squad, likes the players that ultimately have served him well. Hence the reason why Thomas Lemar was brought in when Anthony Martial pulled out of the squad. Thomas Lemar has perhaps not been at his best. I can't say through the fact that I've watched, but from what I have heard, Thomas Lemar has not been at his best for Atletico Madrid, yet was called straight back into the squad. Maybe there were other players that could have been called in ahead of him. But, Deschamps has his favourites, and as we saw tonight, he has his favourites because when he needs them to play well, they play well. So I think come June, we're not going to see wholesale changes. I think with players returning from fitness and, who knows which players pick up a knock between now and the end of the season, I think it's probably only going to be injuries that would result in changes to this squad. I don't think form, bear in mind, what is it? It's two and a bit months, is it? I don't think form will be as major a role, I don't think, for Deschamps as the fact of just pure fitness, I think.
But Pierre, in terms of, I'll get your sort of personal opinion, I suppose, on this one. We've mentioned previously about players we'd like to see in the squad, and the fact that he does sort of stick to his own players. But at the same time, with the squad working so well in these last 2 games, especially, would it be best for him to try and figure out good replacements for those players in those positions, so he doesn't have to try and change this team too much in certain games? Or would you like him to simply pick the best available, or the best he thinks in terms of the squad harmony that he has very much like he has in recent times?
I would say that second option seems quite. I mean, it's essentially what he's been doing, and it's been working out quite well for him. And we know that he has he likes to emphasize on that idea of squad harmony and staying loyal to the players that he knows work well with his methods. Because when you're picking a 23-man squad, you don't want to necessarily take the 23 best players out there. You have to take 12 players who will accept being a substitute. So with regards to that, he also has a lot of information that we don't have. I'm seeing as, he's the one there, he's the one seeing the players, and that's possibly why players like Lacazette or Laporte, who purely based on skill and on the level they're playing at, would be within a shout of this team, but rarely get called up. I think this season he's stayed very loyal to his World Cup champions, in part to kind of continue with the celebratory mood that there is around the team. But it's possible that next season we start to see changes. I would agree with Rich that, going into the June fixtures, we'll probably be staying with a similar group, maybe a few differences because of injury. But next season, after the transfer window, he'll probably be looking to bring in new players, potentially, depending on which of the current players are in a situation where they still have playing time in club or not. So we know that, for example, Thomas Lemar is having a little bit of a tough season right now at Atletico Madrid, and that he probably wants to find a way to get that resolved before next season. He's not the only one. Giroud also has pretty low playing time at Chelsea, and I think also we shouldn't forget that there's some players that missed out on the World Cup experience, but that are still in Deschamps' mind. And the recent proof of that is that Anthony Martial and Kingsley Coman were both called up for this international break, even though in the end neither of them played because of injury. But they were kind of the breakout stars at Euro 2016, even though they missed out on the World Cup. And so we might be seeing some of them again. And they might be putting competition on players like Florian Thauvin, who hasn't always performed very well in a French kit.
And it'd be interesting to see how they do develop. And I'll keep banging the Sebastian Haller training until it actually happens. He's a perfect replacement for the man we're going to chat about briefly now, which is Olivier Giroud, who, much like you mentioned there, Pierre, that hasn't had the playing time at Chelsea. And he's his grievances about that is maybe the best way of putting that this week. Rich, in a number of different interviews, he said that he's not particularly happy with his playing time. He doesn't want to be a Europa League striker. He wants to be more of a permanent fixture somewhere, and has left the door ajar, shall we say, for a Ligue 1 club, but especially one in particular to come and get him, because he did ask, he was asked about Lyon, and he said it's a great club. He has great admiration for Jean-Michel Aulas, and one direct question of saying, if he was to return to Ligue 1, would his priority be Lyon? He said yes. It'd be an interesting one. But do you think that would be a match made in heaven of Giroud to Lyon, or do you think it may be a bit of an awkward fit with the style that they're playing at the moment?
Well, look, first and foremost, I would love to see him back in France. I can't disguise that for one moment. However, if first team football, regular first team football, is what will drive this move for Giroud, I just don't see Lyon being that team. I mentioned it earlier. I thought Moussa Dembele is now looking, really starting to look like the real deal. I think he's becoming quite an important part of this Lyon team. He's giving them a central focal point. but with the movement as well, that perhaps Giroud maybe just lacks slightly. So I just don't see him necessarily displacing Dembele, and nor would I want it to see. You know, as much as I love Giroud, you know, I think we also have to think about the future as well. And Dembele is certainly a French striking option for the future. So I want to see him continue to start for Lyon and continue to score as he is doing at the moment. So I wouldn't want to necessarily see Giroud come in there and take his place or limit, you know, the time that he gets on the pitch. So I don't necessarily see how that Lyon move works for him unless they are going unless they're going to completely either change formation, in which case then you're going to have players playing perhaps slightly out of position, or Dembele is dropped. I don't see how the Lyon move works out for him. Marseille, the other team that's been linked. Again, I'm not quite sure how that works. You know, Rudy Garcia has now started to finally see sense that playing two up front works, but I'm not sure a pairing of Balotelli and Giroud would necessarily get the best out of either of them. You know, Balotelli works well alongside Germain, and it's starting to look like a fairly handy partnership because Germain is that sort of quick mover, creating space. Balotelli isn't about that anymore. Balotelli is about, you know, just relying on his natural finishing ability. And to a degree, I think that's how Giroud would work as well. So I don't see how the two of them really work together. You know, you look at other teams who could possibly look at him. Well, he's not going to get a move to PSG. You know, unless they're looking for a Cavani replacement. I don't see him, you know, that's a move that's just a non-starter. So then you move down the table, you know, you look at, well, you know, with interest in a lot of players at Lille, for example. I know they're limited financially at the moment, but, you know, if something works out in the summer, bear in mind he is a free, but of course he's going to be on a very, very good wage. You know, could they potentially offer him something? You know, Bordeaux have been linked with him before, that they have kept an eye on him and even actually, I think, made an attempt to try and sign him in the summer. They've got new money under new owners. You know, could they offer him something? Nice, you know, maybe, you know, Patrick Vieira could tempt him there. Could we be all lovely and romantic and see him return to Montpellier? I mean, ultimately, I think there's options there. I just don't know if they're the right options for Giroud at this moment in time. I think he's still, I don't want to do down on too many teams, but I think he's still too good maybe for some of those teams that I've just mentioned. And those that he is good enough for, I just don't see necessarily where he fits in. So, you know, I want to be, you know, sort of starry-eyed and think, oh, yeah, your homecoming, he's coming back to France. I don't know. I don't know if I necessarily see where or how it would actually happen.
I think what you're saying is that there's a lot of moving pieces in his situation, and the first of which is, you know, the transfer ban at Chelsea right now. We don't know how that's going to turn out, and if it is confirmed, it's quite possible that Chelsea will just refuse to let any of their players go because they won't be allowed to, you know, recruit otherwise to replace them. And in that case, I mean, I think that would be a little bit of a shame because it seems to me that Sarri is underusing Giroud. I think Giroud has the qualities to be playing in Chelsea's lineup more often than he does. In the rare times where he has played in the league this season, we've seen him have great link-up play with Eden Hazard. They really play well together. And, you know, you raised the question of style at Lyon, notably, and I think Giroud can adapt to different team styles more than we give him credit for. Thankfully, thanks to his link-up play and his 1-2s and his layoffs and so on, which can be very subtle. And he did some good stuff concerning that tonight. He's still got the goal-scoring ability, in my opinion, to make it at Chelsea or anywhere in France. I mean, he's now the third best scorer alone for the French national team. He's the best goal scorer in Europa League, even though he doesn't even start in the league for his team. And then when it comes to Lyon, I think Jean-Michel Aulas said, the Lyon president, he said a few days ago that the Giroud move could be interesting if one of his players were to leave, which adds, another complexity to the puzzle, because then we have to work out which one of them is going to go and whether that might change the Giroud situation based on their position. Added to that is the problem around Bruno Genesio, and is he going to stay this summer as Lyon manager? There's another uncertainty there. So, at this point, it's so hard to predict where he will be next season. But I think I would hope that Chelsea, even if they do suffer from the transfer ban, would let him go, because they don't play him that much, and he will probably need to get more regular playing time. Looking forward to Euro 2020 than he is this season.
Yeah, what an awkward time to get a transfer ban for half these players, I think, who are stuck on the Chelsea bench, and they're in their loan system with the potential FIFA rules coming in as well. It's going to be a tricky one for him. I think Ligue feels like a bit of a fantasy as well. I know he probably won't say it, but his wages are going to be a big stumbling block as well, even if he does move. If he can agree Chelsea to pay a little bit, but they're unlikely, aren't they? Yes. It's just going to make it a bit more difficult. Okay, on to things happening on Saturday, because we do have the first showpiece event, really, of French football at the weekend in the Coupe de la Ligue final. And I think it's got us all excited, Rich, with it finally being a final without Paris Saint-Germain his involvement, and it's, I suppose, not even a top four involvement, which makes it even more intriguing, because it takes Strasbourg will be taking on Guingamp. It's a big game for both teams, really. That's maybe the best way of saying it. But starting with Strasbourg, who have really been distracted really since they got to the final. They've not won in the league since that victory over Bordeaux. This is sort of their accumulation of this season. It's not, I don't want to have to say they have to win this game, but it's becoming more and more important to them.
Well, I think so. As you say, their form has deserted them a little bit. They're sort of scrabbling around for draws here and there, and they've picked up some perhaps surprising losses. I mean, we go back to the beginning of February when they lost 2-1 at home to Angers. They've not been at their best, really. I think that probably stems all the way back. They had a really, really good end to the year and a really, really good start. End of 2018, beginning of 2019 was really, really good. They were winning games. They were as high as, I think, 5th at one point. Everybody was talking about, is this going to be some, marvelous sort of return to European football after everything that the club has been through? And then it sort of just dropped off. And I suppose there's a danger of their season. They're safe first and foremost, which is I think achievement number one met as far as the club are concerned. But there is a danger for a season that perhaps, surprisingly, yes, but perhaps promised something rather good at one point. There's a danger it could fizzle out. So it does feel a bit like an all or nothing game, and maybe, Strasbourg, if they don't come away with victory in this final, may feel a little bit disappointed for their season overall, that, something that could have resulted in European football either through direct qualification in the league or success in the Coupe de la Ligue evaded them. But, it is really nice. And, we all have to sort of scratch our head and think, what does a cup final that doesn't have PSG in it actually look like? Because it's certainly quite some time since we had one of those. But I think it's going to be a really, really good game. I think there's two teams who play, a decent brand of football, and I'm really, really looking forward to seeing what they can put on in a showpiece final.
Yeah, and as for the opponents, Pierre, it's been a strange season for Guingamp. They've really, really struggled, but I've had a couple of good results in the last couple of weeks that have bounced them into sort of the relegation playoff zone at the moment. But at the same time, both teams play on Wednesday after the cup final to catch up on their league games. So is there, I don't know if there's sort of split loyalties for the Brittany side. Do they have still maybe one eye on that game in midweek to try and catch up with others, or do you think that solely their responsibility will be, well, they think, well, this is a chance to get a medal, let's get a cup here and try and do our best to beat Strasbourg?
I think for Guingamp in particular, the second fixture in the midweek, they'll have that on their minds as well, because they now have a chance of saving their skins after being dreadful for most of the season. Their form is just picking up a little bit. They're up in 18th now, so that could be in the back of their heads. And in addition to that, Guingamp, well, this could be their downfall or their success. It could go either way, really. They have the club DNA is almost inscribed in cup competitions. I mean, they won the Coupe de France in 2009 and 2014, and even though they were as small a club then as they are now, and so they already have those successes for them. It could be that they would rather stay in Ligue 1 than win another cup this season. At the same time, this season, though, in the Coupe de la Ligue, they've had a very exceptional run. They beat PSG, they beat Nice, they won their last 3 ties on penalties, actually, thanks to the incredible performances of their substitute goalkeeper Marc-Aurèle Caillard, who made a number of saves in those 3 shootouts and pretty much carried the team to the final here. So I would expect they might do that again on Saturday, just play for the 0-0 and hope to win it on penalties. That was exactly what they did against Paris. For Strasbourg, though, Europe is a little bit far from them. I mean, they're 10th with 39 points. That's 7 points behind 5th place. I think they'll be focused on winning this trophy, which will be their first in a long time, I think. And as you mentioned, I mean, they spent years in the lower divisions after they went bankrupt, and now they have the incredible opportunity of playing in a final. It's going to be a full stadium. This fixture is really a blessing in disguise for the Coupe de la Ligue, which is a somewhat unpopular tournament in France, especially now with the domination of PSG in it. But now that there's no Paris, there's going to be 2, very popular clubs within their regions flocking to Lille to watch this. So I think it'll be an exciting event for sure.
Yeah, and it's an interesting catch-22 for Guingamp, isn't it? I mean, you obviously want to win a competition, and at the same time, winning again might keep the momentum ahead for the league games. But at the same time, they've struggled so much this season that do they really want any type of European competition next season from winning it? It's a strange double-edged sword for them, really, this weekend. I'm pretty sure most of their fans and players will probably put to the back of their minds, but it's interesting to think about, not just for the impact of this season, but even possibly next.
Fixtures, on the Wednesday after, they're playing away to Montpellier, and then the Saturday after that, they're playing at home to Guingamp. Both of those will be quite hard for them, I think. So it could be that they put their efforts in the cup final.
Yeah, it's going to be. I'm really looking forward to this game. It's been a long while since I've really looked forward to a cup final like this, really, in France, Rich. And so let's get predictions, and starting with yourself. What's your prediction of the result in this one, Rich?
I'm going to go that they will put on a really entertaining spectacle. I'm going to go. Oh, it's a really tough one, this. I'm going to go bold. I'm going to go 3-2 to Strasbourg.
Pierre, who do you think takes home the silverware?
I'm not going to be that bold. I mean, I think logic really wants Strasbourg to win it, but I have belief that Guingamp can pull off their plan, and I might see like let's say a 1-1 draw, and then on penalties it's anyone's game. But Guingamp have a good record, so why not?
It'd be classic Guingamp if it did go that way. I think I'm going to go with a form book here in terms of the fact that Strasbourg have been basically throwing the last couple of games, it feels like, to try and win this one, and I think they'll have the edge over Guingamp, and I think a 2-0 win with Guingamp maybe the second half, if they're already 2-0 down, maybe thinking about matters, happening in the league after that, but we should wait and see. It's going to be a great one. Do tune in if you can. That's all that we have time for this week. My thanks to Rich, Pierre, and all of you listening at home. Do join us again for the preview show, which will be back on Thursday, and the main show will be back at the same time, same place next week. A bientôt, and goodbye.